this channel right now. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel after this live stream. To my super chat, I can't thank you enough. Your super chat support is greatly appreciated. This is huge. New Yorker, Vanity Fair, Politico, pretty much every publication has accepted the fact that everyone who went after Trump is going to be arrested and indicted. We have three already. John Bolton this week is reportedly going to be indicted, either arrested and then indicted or vice versa. But he's reportedly going to be indicted. I did a live stream on that. Check that out on H.A. Goodman's other on this channel. And I did a segment on H.A. Goodman's other channel after James Comey. Who's next on Trump's revenge tour? Vanity Fair, meet the likely targets of Trump's revenge tour. Politico, Trump is weaponizing the government against his political adversaries. So they forgot 4 years of 1 million indictments against Trump by Merrick Garland, Jack Smith, mainly Biden and Democrats on the state and federal level. They made up crimes, and now we have crimes that are mortgage fraud is very simple to prove. It's not difficult. Also, the RUSSIAGATE hoax is not simple to prove. Is very simple to prove. And let's start really with Kash Patel right here. More people are going to be arrested and indicted pertaining to the absurd, nonsensical, completely irrational hoax that Russia wanted Trump. Russia would want Democrats, not Trump. You'd have to be a complete imbecile to think that Russia would be afraid in any way at all of Democrats. They invaded under Biden. They invaded under Obama. They invaded under Bush. So they don't really care. They don't care at all. That was a scapegoat that Democrats fabricated and blamed Trump because he won. The retribution took place when Trump won. But check this out. Hit subscribe. More people are going to be arrested and indicted very soon. Listen to this.
Action-packed 7 months for the Trump administration. But for everything that you see and hear on the news, there is so much more happening behind the scenes. At the FBI, the director, Kash Patel, is working around the clock with Dan Bongino and others and other agents. Not only are they dealing with the crime crisis left behind by Joe Biden and unvetted illegals, 12 to 20 million. Bureaucracy. For example, Kash Patel, the FBI director, recently uncovered thousands and thousands of Russia hoax documents inside these burn bags in a secret room at the FBI. The director also discovered
they were written on computers run by that connected to government servers. So these people are not very smart. They try to destroy everything in bags. But they were written on computers, genius. So you can't destroy something that it has a digital footprint.
Discovered official allegations from a Democratic staffer who accused Adam Schiff of orchestrating leaks of classified intelligence in order to hurt President Trump. Those allegations had been swept under the rug at the FBI until now. And that's not all. According to a bombshell report from justthenews.com founder, editor-in-chief John Solomon, James Comey also accused of routinely leaking classified information to the New York Times through a friend, a professor at Columbia University. Just the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, here with the very latest, FBI Director Kash Patel. Kash, great to have you.
Show your daughter how much you love her.
Burn room. Now, your knowledge of this issue runs wide and it runs deep because you were working with Devin Nunes at the time. I believe you were his chief of staff. You know a lot about this topic. Were you as surprised as I was that all of that information in that burn room existed?
Sean, I was blown away, but sadly, it's come to be expected in this town when corrupt bureaucrats weaponize and destroy law enforcement like predecessors of mine did at the FBI. And thankfully, Donald Trump's mandate and election victory was for transparency and accountability. Sean, just think about this for a second. Not only did we expose the RUSSIAGATE hoax with the greats like Devin and Trey and Johnny Ratcliffe when we were back there in the House Intel Committee excavating and exposing the FISA abuses, the corruption of political parties, and the lies to a federal court just to illegally surveil a presidential candidate. I come in then years later, nearly a decade as a director of the FBI, thinking we uncovered most of it. But sadly, we found a room locked away in the Hoover building that contained burn bags. And just for your audience, Sean, a burn bag is a government bag that is specifically created to destroy classified evidence and shred and burn it. Hence the name burn bag. We didn't find one, we found 7. That wasn't the only thing we found in there. We found hard drives from our predecessors and prior FBI leadership. And folks like Page, Strzok, Comey, McCabe, Comey, the list goes on from Russiagate. The names were strewn all over these materials. Now, as our great Attorney General just told you, we can't deny or confirm what we're looking at, but what we can discuss is what we've publicly disclosed. And these documents have been publicly disclosed because the greatest way to educate and bring along the American public for transparency, initiative, and accountability under President Trump is to give them the documents. And step 1...
One or two of the FBI agents that Kash Patel mentioned had 50,000 text messages reportedly in like a 8-month period. How do you text 50,000 times in 6 or 7 or 8 months? How is that possible?
It's by cleaning house inside the walls of Hoover.
Okay, well, one of the important things you got to remember is that that's the FBI's job. You gather the evidence, and then it is examined, in this case, by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And, but there's been a lot of talk and a lot written about the investigation into a grand conspiracy. To the extent possible, what can you tell us about that? In other words, that this is long-standing. If it is, in fact, a grand conspiracy, the statute of limitations would be eliminated. Is that what the investigation is about?
Well, Sean, what we're doing is building a case for the American public under the Truth and Transparency and Accountability Initiative. And what I mean by that is AG Bondi brilliantly highlighted our partners, Director Ratcliffe at the CIA and Director Gabbard over at the DNI. We are working with them because the documents that would facilitate an investigation of this magnitude don't just rest at the FBI and DOJ. They're throughout the intelligence community. And we, the Russiagate guys like Johnny Ratcliffe and myself who investigated this and exposed this, are trying to expose documentation that we've known existed for years. At the same time, we're finding new material. So the best approach is to release this information with them and also go to our colleagues in Congress who have an oversight function on the judiciary committees and oversight committees and demand from us information and documentation that we can publicize. Things like the Durham Annex, which we've known have existed this entire time, but were classified for political reasons. We are educating the American public as we build through this transparency initiative. And where the investigation goes, I can assure you of this. We will max accountability for the American public. We delivered before when we ran the Russiagate investigation. I now happen to be President Trump's choice for FBI director, and I'm honored to lead that charge with our great partners in Johnny Ratcliffe and our great Attorney General and the prosecutors they have over there who are just as committed to justice as everyone should be, blindly so. We are going to de-weaponize the FBI and get its credibility back to the American people by delivering the accountability they need, by showing them what we're doing every step of the way. That has never been done before.
Restoring the FBI to its former greatness. That would be the words I would use to describe what needs to be done and I hope can be done. If we look at the declassified materials, for example, that Tulsi Gabbard released, we already had an intelligence assessment on the question of whether or not Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin. Here I am in Alaska. They will have a summit tomorrow. And in fact, the conclusion of senior career intelligence officials was it did not happen. There's no evidence at all that it happened. Then the report suggests that Barack Obama himself, along with his top intel officials, that would probably be people like Brennan and Clapper and maybe some others, decided to do a new intelligence assessment because they didn't like the old one. And they got a narrative that moved forward. But yet also they added something, and I believe it was John Brennan that said they did not do this, but then they used the Hillary Clinton bought and paid for Russian disinformation dossier. That was also used by James Comey for the FISA applications. He signed 3 of the 4. He was warned in August of 2016 not to use it. And then we knew definitively by December of 2016 that, in fact, that that dossier had been debunked and that Christopher Steele was incredible. So the question is a timeline.
Home Depot hates when you do this, but
add that to the 2020 election and the fact that by March of 2020, they knew Hunter's laptop, they had verified its authenticity and that it was real. And then they're pre-bunking it by meeting weekly with big tech companies. And then when it gets dropped, which they knew would happen because of Rudy Giuliani's attorney, they knew Bob Costello had a copy. Are they putting cinder blocks on the scales of elections? Was weaponization from 2020 to 2024 designed to bloody up Trump? In other words, do we have 3 presidential elections potentially that cinder blocks were put on the scales of the election so the results would come out the way one team wanted it to come out, the team in power?
Here's the beauty of it, Sean. You don't have to trust me or trust you. That's all. Everything you recited, the summary you just gave, is years of excavating documents that these deep state actors held and buried and documented their own corruption because they were arrogant enough to think no one would ever find it.
They tried to take Trump's life. Of course, it wasn't, any kind of conspiratorial thing. It was just one individual. Yes, of course, just one individual. That's why the New York Times and the Washington Post and MSNBC and CNN and Late Night did zero investigative journalism. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Of course, it was just one individual. There definitely wasn't an attempt to end President Trump's future. And a firefighter lost his life that day protecting his family. And you'd think that the wonderful Nobel Prize winning journalists at the Washington Post and New York Times would care. And I don't understand why nobody has done any investigative journalism on Butler, Pennsylvania. And you had 100 yards where a rooftop was not part of the 100-yard radius of the Secret Service, and you had people. I mean, it was almost as if people in government wanted a certain outcome. Gee, that would be bizarre. That's never happened before in American history, right? So, but he survived Trump, and that poor firefighter did not, saving his family. But he survived Trump, and I don't think that they thought that I don't think that the people who despised Trump thought he would survive, right? They wanted their, potentially, like the Honorable James Comey says, they wanted their own Zapruder film so they could, do something to themselves every time they saw it. But now Trump is more powerful, more influential, more effective than they ever could have imagined. They catapulted Trump into world history. Not just, he was part of world history as as a one-term president. They catapulted Trump into one of the great historical leaders of all time because they're so apoplectic and hysterical, and they stand for nothing. If you don't like ICE, change the laws. There's literally laws in the books that ICE is enforcing. Change the laws. Why doesn't AOC run on changing? Why don't Democrats run on changing the laws that they despise? Because they know that they would lose the House in 26. They're completely deceitful and duplicitous. And the voters are their constituents are very gullible and impressionable. It takes 3 weeks of media coverage. And they don't ask obvious, serious questions like, well, if you don't like laws that ICE is enforcing, why don't you change those laws? Of course, they're completely duplicitous. They would never want to change laws because it would hurt them politically. They just want to foment as much hysteria as possible. The Democratic Party today and the Republicans in the early 2000s live off hysteria.
That Donald Trump would never become president and appoint a cabinet that would go in and investigate this matter thoroughly. And when you start connecting the dots, here's what I learned, Sean, when I ran the RUSSIAGATE investigation. As bad as the crime is, the corruption cover-up from senior government officials who are sworn to uphold their duties and accountability for the American public, they are the ones that violated that trust the most internally and need to be held accountable. So the people you've listed and the names you're calling out aren't surprises. Their names are on those documents. Those documents are public. The FISA's public. The 302s are public. The Strzok page texts are public. Documents are being released weekly by Johnny Ratcliffe and Tulsi, making it public. The burn bag information is coming out. The Durham Annex is coming out. The classified appendix is coming out. The American people are going to see and hear the names themselves, and they can touch and feel it. As far as what my investigators are going to do, these guys are the best in the business, and we've assembled a team of accountability, and we're going to deliver for the American people.
So it's only a matter of time before about 10, 12, 13, 14 people get indicted. We're probably going to get an indictment and arrest once a month, once every 3 weeks for the next year. Because there are a lot of people who broke the law. See, here's the issue, okay? Democrats broke the law, and certain Republicans broke the law trying to accuse Trump of breaking the law or framing and setting him up. Okay, Trump didn't break the law. That's a fact. It is an absolute fact. Trump broke no laws. Okay? That's why he was never convicted of anything. Because had he actually broken the law with all of media, Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, all of Hollywood, every single apoplectic, hysterical, morally superior liberal Democrat, attorney, a non-governmental organization, I mean, he had the entire American political establishment against him, including the Republican Party. And they still couldn't get Trump because he didn't break the law. In less than what? Less than a year, you have 3 indictments, one on the way with Bolton. That's just less than a year, and you're going to have probably 10, 12 upcoming because they didn't actually break the law. Perjury is a crime. Mortgage fraud is a crime. You know, fomenting a rebellion and being part of a Russian collusion. These are nonsensical, made-up crimes. They had nothing on Trump, but Trump has everything on them.
A grand jury investigation is now underway regarding the Trump-Russia hoax. The media enablers that peddled the lie for years, though, are circling the wagons.
This is extraordinarily stupid. It's extraordinarily stupid on so many counts. Barack Obama had nothing to do with this by anybody's accounts.
We're all for transparency on any potential corruption, right? But this is something that has been combed over for a decade now.
I think they're trying to create the appearance of progress in this investigation without actually making any progress.
They all did their job.
So in that echo chamber, and they interviewed, by the way, a top public journalist, a top industry media mogul or media industry expert mogul. He owned a couple publications. It's a very influential person. I forgot exactly who he is, but it was Politico, I think, interviewed them. Or I forgot which publication. But anyway, the person said he had never seen liberal media in such a terrible position, that companies are going to go out of business, that journalists are going to go out of work. Because what happened with President Trump is that the entire American political establishment, journalism itself, it was almost like a cosmic event. They were so entrenched in the energy that they committed to trying to destroy Trump, that they themselves experienced what they tried to level at Trump, and only Trump got stronger. It's like a weird quantum physics thing. The more that they went after Trump, the less energy and money they made, and the more money, the more energy, the more political capital, the more President Trump won his second term. Now we have J.D. Vance. Biden is like a modern day Jimmy Carter. Because, the Republicans are not going to lose a national election for the next 13 years, at least the next 8 years. So, a presidential election. So, I mean, the liberal media is pretty much, they don't have anything else. They have spent 10 years in the most hysterical, apoplectic frenzy, and nobody trusts media anymore. Nobody. Hollywood is losing. Hollywood is losing money. Journalism is losing money. All of the industries against Trump are becoming either archaic or losing a tremendous amount of money, and Trump is gaining an influence and power. And I told you this would take place like 10 years ago.
Job, right? For the 4 years, 5 years. Meanwhile, President Trump, he's awaiting answers.
Has nothing to do.
Big Amish, hello. Pleasure to see you here. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for the kind words.
Pam is doing a great job. I have nothing to do with it. I will tell you this. They deserve it. I was happy to hear it. I actually read it just like you did. I have nothing to do with it.
Here with reaction is Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. Director Gabbard, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Laura.
There's a report tonight from the Federalist that the DOJ is actually asking you for more documents in its grand jury probe. Is that true? And what are they asking for now?
You are right.
That is true, Laura, and I just want to point out how important this is, that Attorney General Pam Bondi, through the Department of Justice, is taking this necessary first step toward accountability, which is essential for the American people to begin to have any kind of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. I met with the Department of Justice prosecutors today, and yes, they are committed to leaving no stone unturned as they conduct this grand jury investigation and find the truth. Obviously, we've already handed over the documents that we've declassified and released publicly over the last few weeks. They have more questions, and they're going to be really taking a deep dive into this again, looking everywhere to find the truth and conduct this very serious investigation.
You heard the media reaction, and a lot of these same people were just buying lock, stock, and barrel what was sold to them during the 2016 election. But they're essentially saying, this is all old news. This is such a stupid political move on their part. Into that, you say?
By the way, the sensibilities, when someone says, oh, it's not that important, this is old news, that is called the sensibilities of a person. It has nothing to do with logic or reason. It's what their person as their opinion. It's what they feel is part of their sensibilities, what they think is reasonable. Has nothing to do with logic. When Comey said no reasonable prosecutor, no credible prosecutor, when they accuse Trump, it's a credible allegation. When they're accused, it's a baseless allegation. The credibility and the sensibilities of morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats cannot stop what's taking place. So the days when Comey could write a memo and then like the entire government would move, those days are over. It's 10 years ago. Now it's James Brown, the big payback.
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents a couple of weeks ago. They tried to ignore it. When they realized that they weren't going to get away with this, that this story was going to continue breathing life, we continued releasing new documents. Then they decided, oh, we'll take this approach of say, oh, this is nothing. There's nothing really to see here. This is bizarre. This is a conspiracy. These are the things that they do over and over and over again. And the next step they will take when they feel that they are not succeeding in getting rid of this truth that we have uncovered for the American people, then they will go.
Thelma Joseph's in New Zealand. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks, everybody.
Down the route of we must destroy and smear and attack the credibility of those who are delivering the truth to the American people. They've done this to President Trump. They've done this to me. They've done this to so many different people, once again, who are trying to tell the American people the truth and expose these people, many of whom you just showed, for who they are as the propaganda arm of the deep state, which would have no power and no influence if they weren't able to feed their lies into a willing spokesperson through the propaganda media.
Now, Director, you said there was irrefutable evidence that Obama was the mastermind of this intelligence manipulation and the perpetuation of the Russia hoax. What is that?
So, it's purely speculation. I have no evidence. I have no knowledge. I think President Obama is secretly helping President Trump. Either he has, or he's currently, or he will, to circumvent any legal or criminal liability, number one, and number two, to completely take control of the Democratic Party away from the I'm with her crowd. And so I think Hillary Clinton will eventually get indicted. I think that you have Brennan. That indictment is upcoming. You have Bolton, and this is like low-hanging fruit in terms of corruption. Okay, everyone knows that these people committed crimes, perjury, leaking classified data. I mean, the perjury and the leaking of classified data alone. Then you have the conspiracy statutes. Then you had everything to do with the Steele dossier. So, I mean, there's a million ways to indict the people. And now Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and all of them, Ratcliffe, they all have the emails, the text messages, the documents, the classified data, the hard drives, everything that, Clinton destroyed. They have all of that stuff.
Irrefutable evidence for our viewers tonight.
Yeah, Laura, as you were playing those clips of these people like Morning Joe seemingly befuddled, saying that by no account is any of this true, I would challenge them to see if they've actually read the documents, every single page of the documents that we've released over the last couple of weeks. If not, go to odni.gov, G-O-V. It's all right there for anyone to see. And those who go in and read this will see how President Obama directed that a National Security Council meeting be called to talk about Russia, that the report that came out of that meeting was filled with tasks that were delivered by James Clapper's assistant to John Brennan and to other elements of the intelligence community. John Brennan was the head of the CIA at the time, all saying...
So check this out again. Listen to this again. It's right here.
GOV, it's all right there for anyone to see. And those who go in and read this will see how President Obama directed that a National Security Council meeting be called to talk about Russia, that the report that came out of that meeting was filled with tasks that were delivered by James Clapper's assistant to John Brennan and to other elements of the intelligence community. John Brennan was the head of the CIA at the time, all saying per the president's direction, per the president's order. And very specifically, they were tasked to create an intelligence assessment.
And then Susan Rice had an email to herself or a memo stating that everything was done above board, which is an acknowledgement that likely things were not done above board. But see, President Obama is part of the same club that President Trump is. Even though he was president the last 2-3 months, the last 2-3 months of President Obama's presidency, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Comey, and others began the investigation of Trump based on fabricated, complete nonsense. That is a crime. And whether it's possible that President Obama was either in on it or gave tacit approval, but right now he's a two-term president. So is Trump. They spoke to each other at Jimmy Carter's funeral like old friends. They're part of a club. If you were a part of a club with 47 people, you have 47 people. It's more than the Hall of Fame. It's more than the Football Hall of Fame wearing my Warren Moon jersey. Love Warren Moon. It's more than the Hall of Fame. It's more than the baseball, football, basketball Hall of Fame. It's more than any golf club. It's more than any Wimbledon. It's more than anything you can imagine in terms of a fraternity. Imagine being a former president. There's only 47. You go back and you are part of the same club George Washington was a part of. You don't think that Obama and Trump are friends? Of course they are. You could see, he even said, you can watch on this channel, they are friends. And who do you think President Obama likes more, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? I'll give you a hint. One person, the person he likes more has orange hair. Okay, it's Trump. No doubt. Who do you think President Obama likes more or appreciates more, John Brennan or Donald Trump? Of course, Trump. The people that he had to work with are career bureaucrats. They're political creatures. They're bureaucratic animals. And he was very good. Like any president is very good at dealing with bureaucracy. He might differ ideologically from Trump, obviously, but that doesn't mean he's not part of the same fraternity. And so President Obama circumvents legal or criminal liability because there were a million crimes in setting up and framing Trump. Plus, he likes Trump. Plus, Trump likes him. And then he can take control of the Democratic Party. I'm telling you, there's gold in that analysis.
That detailed how Moscow tried to influence the election, not if, but how. And this was the beginning of this manufactured intelligence assessment where they knowingly wrote things in this assessment that were false, and they knew they were false. They knew that they were basing it on discredited intelligence or documents like the Steele dossier that was politically motivated and that they knew was false. And this was how they came up with the Russia hoax that was then weaponized and used to try to delegitimize the President Trump, and to try to ultimately enact this years-long coup throughout his entire 4 years of his first administration.
And they further say that there's like this idea of saying that Obama is guilty of treason, that there's almost no chance that he's going to be charged or convicted of treason. So why even go there? And I'll pose that question to you.
Because you want to give some incentive. Even though President Obama can take complete control of the Democratic Party once Hillary Clinton is indicted, and he probably wants that to happen as well as Trump, because he does face criminal liability. Okay? They tried to accuse Trump of fomenting rebellion and working with the Kremlin. This is all nonsense. However, there were crimes committed setting up and framing Trump with RUSSIAGATE. That was a crime. Accusing Trump of working with the Kremlin or Russians was a crime. That was there were legal statutes they broke. 18 U.S. Code 371. They deceived the entire American public utilizing a dossier that Clinton purchased. Imagine if Rudy Giuliani and Trump purchased a dossier that said President Trump or President Obama was in a Moscow hotel room, or Hillary Clinton was in a Moscow hotel room with Bill. Oh, that would never happen. So imagine.
The integrity of our democratic republic depends on the American people knowing the truth about what actually happened and seeking that accountability, bringing about that accountability. I don't know how else to characterize what happens when there is a sitting president of the United States, there is a director of the CIA, a director of national intelligence under President Obama, the head of the NSA, James Comey is the head of the FBI, all coming together, and this is documented in what we released, all coming together to create this lie with the intent of delegitimizing the duly elected president of the United States because the person they wanted to win actually lost. And the American people made their own choice in spite of everything that happened in that 2016 election, and they chose Donald Trump. This was not a one-off thing. This wasn't just, oh, well, they fudged the lines a little bit. They created a lie and propagated that lie in order to try to undermine the person that the American people chose to be our president and commander-in-chief.
To your point that you made earlier, that when they're losing on the facts, they demonize the messenger. And in this case, you're the messenger. And I think this is a big reason your opposition to the forever war syndrome, that's one reason. But then this was another reason they clearly did not want you in your position. And to that point, Mark Warner Of course, Democrat senator from Virginia wrote on X today, Tulsi Gabbard is a threat to our national security and should be fired. He's taking his orders pretty well, don't you think, Director?
Never sue the
Whenever you hear Democrats or Republicans say this person is a threat to our democracy, our republic, our Constitution, they really mean the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party has become a synonym, or the Constitution has become a synonym for the Democratic Party. The republic, democracy has become a synonym for the Democratic Party, okay, or a euphemism. And so what they really mean is when they say this, Tulsi or Trump, these are threats to our republic or democracy. It's like the only threat is to your political party, which Trump is crushing every day.
He has and continues to be a reliable soldier. And you're right there, Laura, to make that comparison, because these very same tactics they are using now are the same tactics that the warmongers of Washington have consistently used whenever anyone challenges them to say, hey, this does not serve the best interests of the American people. It does not make us more safe, secure, and free. So why are you doing this? Exposing these people for who they are. And once again, who is the deep state? What does it consist of? We're seeing this revealed in real time here. And it's important for the American people to pay attention and realize, like, hey, with the mainstream propaganda media, we got to pay attention. We got to use our common sense and recognize we should accept nothing they say at face value.
And how
the media is an extension of the Democratic Party. The majority of the media.
important
The majority of the media. I'm trying to get Laura Ingraham to in a different.
is it to root out?
Okay. The majority of the majority of American media. You take every journalist, every editor, every person that works at the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, The Atlantic, Rolling Stone, The Nation, Mother Jones, The Daily Beast, every local major newspaper, if they walked into the cafeteria of their jobs with a Make America Great Again hat, they would be fired immediately. It would take less than 1 day for them to go into an office and say, look, you know what, you're really good, but we're probably going to move in a different direction. Why? What happened? No, nothing. Right? It's because you wore the red "Make America Great Again" hat at the cafeteria at the New York Times and Washington Post. Why would you do that? So they are all public relations executives, almost all of them. There are some good journalists, but the editors. It's not just a journalist. The journalist doesn't decide oftentimes, almost always, the headline, the title of an article isn't decided by the journalist. Okay, the journalist gives the article to the editor. That's why it's published a whole bunch of times. 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. A lot. You can go to hagoodman.com. I had editors. Okay, the editors decide the title, the headline. The editors also can make, correction. The editors will not accept an article that doesn't fit what the publication wants to publicize. So, the journalists, editors, and people who run the publications, whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, these are liberal Democrats. They're not apolitical people. They're like Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel and the editor at the New York Times have the same political ideology. It's this Hollywood and American media, late night. It's the same political ideology. They're pushing a narrative. They don't care about the truth or what is just good for national security, what is just good for the country. Okay? Trump could do a million good things. They don't care because it's tribalism now. It's an atheistic political religion that can be described as tribalism. The Democrats, 50, 60 years ago, most Americans lived through the Great Depression. So it didn't matter whether you were a Democrat or Republican. You went to church and you lived through the Great Depression and you knew what real strife and struggle was. The modern Great Depression is when Trump won in 2016. The Jacob Javits Center, people crying, "Oh my God, Trump!" So the people who lived through the 30s and 40s, 20s, 30s and 40s, and, you know, they didn't care about the difference between Republicans and Democrats. They were Americans, and it was all, you know, that's what it was. Of course, there were different struggles, and the country became better, civil rights movement and all of that. But the biggest calamity in the lives of liberal Democrats now is not the Great Depression. It's not World War II. It's not Vietnam. It's Trump winning. Ah! And so that's why you have Trump derangement syndrome.
Out any remaining problems in these agencies, Director, because we need our people to believe in the FBI, to believe in the CIA, to or get rid of them altogether. I mean, I hate to say that, or just completely defund a lot of these intelligence agencies. If we can't trust them, if they're going to subvert democracy and subvert our presidency, why are we funding them?
Well, this is, and I'll go back to that Mark Warner tweet that you put out saying that I'm a threat to national security. Why? Because I'm actually exposing the truth. As Director of National Intelligence, I'm doing the work to go and root out those deep state bad actors within the intelligence community because our country's national security depends on it. The rule of law requires it. The integrity of our democratic republic requires that, rooting out the truth, telling the truth to the American people, and bringing about that accountability. So yes, it is essential across the board, not only to root out the individual bad actors, but to enact the kind of institutional reform to make it so that these kinds of things cannot be allowed to happen again.
Has been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office.
That's called negotiating. So President Obama circumvents criminal liability and takes control of the Democratic Party. That's called negotiating.
They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level.
President Trump today calling out former President Obama after DNI Tulsi Gabbard sent a criminal referral to the DOJ related to her claims that Obama-era officials manufactured and politicized intelligence to create the Russia collusion narrative in 2016. Intelligence that those officials have said they had great confidence in.
John Brennan and Jim Comey and I are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put.
We were tasked by President Obama. Certainly not our fault. We shouldn't be indicted. And, well, it wasn't our doing. In fact, we had nothing to do with it. It's all President Obama's fault, actually. Why do you think that I might be right, ladies and gentlemen? They're all going to blame President Obama. Oh, well, he tasked us with this task.
Put together all the reporting we had on the Russian interference, and which we did. And then, of course, on January 6th, we issued our intelligence community assessment documenting the Russian interference, in which we had very high confidence in the evidence that we presented.
Gabbard also teeing up that there will be more declassified documents coming this week. Ahead of that, here's what we've learned so far. December 7th, 2016, the assessment reiterated that Russia did not tamper with election infrastructure. Just one day later, the editor of that assessment canceled the brief, quote, based on new guidance. By December 9th, 2016, Obama convened National Security Council principals and ordered a new assessment. And on January 6, 2017, the new unclassified assessment was released. Obama's office today firing back, issuing the following statement. Out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response. But these claims are outrageous enough to merit one.
They have to, continue the facade. But I do think President Obama and President Trump are helping, or President Obama is helping President Trump to, number one, circumvent legal or criminal liability. Number two, to take control completely of the Democratic Party. Hit subscribe, by the way, if you're new, and go to H.A. Goodman's other channel after this segment.
These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election but did not successfully manipulate any votes. These findings were affirmed in a 2020 report by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence.
It wasn't bipartisan, and they didn't manipulate any votes, so therefore they couldn't interfere. The inherent in the word interference is the manipulation of votes. So President Obama knew right there. He's admitting, he's like, it's a big hoax. No votes were altered, but let's continue the facade.
Intelligence Committee, led by then Chairman Marco Rubio. Joining me now to react is the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Director Gabbard, give me your response to what we heard from former President Obama there. He's saying that none of this makes any sense, that this is a distraction. What do you say to that?
It's the art of deflection coming from former President Obama, as well as his friends who are still in Congress today, and Senator Warner and Congressman Jim Himes, really all basically saying that exact same statement, which doesn't actually address the issue that was revealed in great detail in the over 100 documents that we released last week, in the documents that we will be releasing later this week, that point to the undeniable fact that you laid out in your introduction to this segment, is that the intelligence community had one assessment, that Russia did not have the intent or capability to try to impact the outcome of the U.S. election leading up to Election Day. The same assessment was made after Donald Trump was elected by the American people as president in 2016, defeating Hillary Clinton. And it wasn't until after that pulled President's Daily Brief document that you referenced that the Principals Committee was called in the National Security Council. And President Obama then directed Obama's DNI James Clapper to lead the effort to create this new intelligence community assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow attempted to influence the outcome of the U.S. election. So this is the thing that I think people should pay attention to, is neither the message from President Obama's office, neither the statements coming from Democrats in Congress today and their friends in the propaganda media, none of them are addressing this fact that there was a shift, a 180-degree shift from the intelligence community's assessment leading up to the election to the one that President Obama directed be produced after Donald Trump won the election, that completely contradicted those assessments that had come previously. The second thing I want to address that's very important, Laura, is that you in the clip that you played, you saw John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey stated with high confidence this January intelligence community assessment that they drafted at the direction of President Obama. The fact is that they used already discredited information like the Steele dossier. They knew it was discredited at that time, yet they used it as a source for this document that they claim to have high confidence in. They used intelligence that some of these intelligence community professionals rejected previously because of the lack of credibility and the lack of the ability to vet with any kind of confidence whether or not that information or intelligence was accurate and could be used for an assessment. There's a long laundry list of facts and intelligence reporting that directly contradict the statement coming from President Obama's office and those who are trying to deflect away from what actually happened, which was after Donald Trump was elected, led by President Obama, there was an effort to create a document that would serve as a foundation for what would be a years-long coup against President Trump, therefore trying to subvert the will of the American people who sent him to the White House in 2016.
Well, it's amazing that you are now releasing all of this. And Tulsi, I have to tell you, for those of us who lived through it, thank you. I think it's great that we're getting this information out. You say there is more information, there are more documents to be released. Anything you can tell us on that?
We will be releasing these documents shortly in the wake of the release that we did last week. I'm very encouraged by the fact that we have whistleblowers coming forward who are intelligence community professionals who were there when this happened and who were disgusted by it and are heartened at the possibility and the hope that the truth will see the light of day. And of course, the most important thing is that the American people see accountability, which is why we're referring and have already sent all of the documents that we have currently and any others that we get in the future to the Department of Justice to bring about that accountability, to ensure that the integrity of our democratic republic exists, that the American people can have faith and trust that who they vote for in our elections to be elected will actually be respected by those who are leaving power.
Amen to that. Well, Director Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for all your hard work.
Tulsi Gabbard is amazing. Ben, thank you so much. Yes, the best is yet to come. God bless you all, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel. People who went after Trump and committed crimes will be indicted and arrested. We're getting the third one in Bolton this coming week. Check this live stream. Go to hagoodman.com. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. You can go to hagoodman.com to read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, The Federalist, Salon, other publications. But anyway, go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. God bless you all. Thanks, everybody. And I have a beautiful, amazing day, evening. Thank you for watching. And around the world, thank you as well.